A man once cried to Allah for years because he desperately wanted a specific door to open. Every night he made dua. Every night he begged. But the door never opened. Instead, Allah kept closing it harder. Years later, that same man discovered something terrifying. Behind the door he was crying for was the destruction of his peace, his family, and his faith. And he said something that changed his life forever. Ya Allah, if you gave me what I wanted back then, it would have destroyed me. Tonight, some of you are crying over people exactly like that door. You think they were your happiness. You think losing them ruined your future. But what if Allah saw something your emotions were too blind to see? What if the person who left you was secretly delaying the life Allah was trying to guide you toward? Because sometimes Allah does not remove people to punish you. Sometimes He removes them because your next chapter cannot begin while they are still standing in the way. And maybe this heartbreak was not Allah abandoning you. Maybe this was Allah rescuing you before the damage became permanent. Tonight, you will understand why some people disappear from your life suddenly, why some heartbreaks change your soul completely, and why the person Allah sends after the pain often makes you realize why the others were never meant to stay. The person who left you may have been blocking the future Allah wrote for you. You cried because they left. But what if Allah removed them because they were silently delaying the life you were meant to enter? What if the heartbreak that almost destroyed you was actually the beginning of Allah protecting your future? Most people only see the pain of loss. But believers must learn to see something deeper. Not every goodbye is punishment. Sometimes Allah removes people because they no longer belong in the next chapter of your life. You were trying to hold on to them, while Allah was trying to guide you somewhere better. And this is the painful reality many people refuse to accept. Some people feel good to your emotions, but dangerous to your soul. You loved them. You trusted them. You imagined your future around them. But Allah sees the unseen. Allah knows conversations you never heard, intentions you never noticed, problems you were too emotionally attached to recognize. Sometimes the person you are begging Allah to keep is the exact person Allah knows will break your peace later. And maybe tonight, you still replay their memories in your mind. You still wonder why they changed, why they became distant, why they suddenly walked away after making you feel important. But maybe Allah allowed them to leave because your heart was becoming too attached to something temporary. Because human beings have a dangerous habit. They start depending on people more than they depend on Allah. And slowly, their happiness becomes controlled by one person's attention. One message, one phone call, one moment of validation. But Allah will sometimes remove people to remind you that no human being was created to carry the place that only Allah should hold inside your heart. And this is why some heartbreaks feel unbearable, because Allah is not only removing a person, He is breaking the unhealthy attachment that was slowly controlling your soul. You thought they were your future, but maybe they were only a lesson that taught you not to ignore red flags. A lesson that taught you not to lose yourself chasing love. A lesson that taught you that emotional attachment can blind people from reality. Because sometimes, when someone leaves your life, your first reaction is sadness. But years later, your reaction becomes gratitude. You finally realize how much chaos they would have brought into your future, how much anxiety they normalized, how much emotional exhaustion you tolerated just to keep them. And suddenly you understand why Allah closed the door. Because Allah can see the ending while you are still attached to the beginning. That is why believers must trust Allah even when the pain makes no sense. Because the heart only sees what it wants. But Allah sees what will destroy you. And maybe the person who left you was not removing happiness from your life. Maybe Allah was removing an obstacle from the path He already wrote for you. a healthier future, a calmer heart, a stronger connection with Him. And perhaps one day you will look back at the heartbreak that made you cry all night and realize it was actually one of the greatest acts of mercy Allah ever gave you. Sometimes Allah breaks your heart to save your soul. There are heartbreaks that do more than hurt you. They change you. They shake your entire world. They make you question your worth, your future, even yourself. And sometimes the pain becomes so heavy, you sit alone at night replaying every memory over and over again. You wonder what you did wrong. You wonder why they stopped loving you. You wonder why someone who once made you feel special suddenly became cold, distant, and unfamiliar. And the most painful part is this: you never expected them to become the reason for your tears. But listen carefully tonight. Not every heartbreak is meant to destroy you. Some heartbreaks are meant to wake you up before your soul gets destroyed completely. Because sometimes Allah breaks your heart to save your soul. You were becoming emotionally addicted to someone who was slowly draining your peace. You kept ignoring signs because your feelings were louder than your wisdom. You kept making excuses for behavior that quietly damaged your self-respect. You accepted inconsistency, mixed signals, emotional confusion, distance, disrespect. And because you loved them, you kept hoping they would change. But Allah saw what your emotions refused to see. Allah saw how much of yourself you were sacrificing just to keep someone in your life. And sometimes Allah allows painful endings because the relationship itself was becoming harmful to your iman, your emotional health, and your future. Because not every connection is a blessing. Some connections are tests. Some people enter your life only to expose the weaknesses inside your heart, your fear of abandonment, your emotional dependence, your desperation for validation, your tendency to ignore red flags just to avoid loneliness. And this dunya has trained people to chase love in unhealthy ways. People become obsessed with being chosen by humans, while forgetting that the greatest honor is being close to Allah. So Allah sometimes removes the person you idolized emotionally to remind you where your heart truly belongs. Because believers are not supposed to build their entire identity around human beings. People leave, people disappoint, people change, but Allah remains. And sometimes heartbreak becomes the reason a person finally returns sincerely to Allah. Think about it. How many people started praying with real tears only after heartbreak? How many people made their deepest dua after someone shattered their heart? How many people became closer to Allah because the dunya finally disappointed them? That pain you hate so much may actually be pulling your soul back toward its creator. Because when everything is going well, human beings often become distracted. But pain has a strange power. Pain removes illusions. Pain exposes truth. Pain humbles the ego. Pain reminds you how weak human beings really are. And maybe Allah allowed your heart to break because your soul was slowly sleeping. Maybe you were becoming too attached to dunya, too attached to attention, too attached to one person. So Allah removed the thing you depended on emotionally, so you could finally learn to depend on Him again. And yes, the healing process hurts. There will be nights you miss them. Nights you feel empty. Nights you question whether you will ever feel loved again. But do not let temporary pain convince you that Allah abandoned you. Sometimes Allah wounds the heart to cleanse it. Sometimes Allah removes people because He heard conversations you never heard and saw intentions you never saw. And sometimes the person you are crying over today would have destroyed your peace years from now. But because Allah loves you, He ended the story early. And one day, when your heart finally heals, you may realize something that changes everything. You were never being punished. You were being protected. because Allah did not break your heart to ruin your life. He broke your attachment to something that was never meant to own your soul in the first place. The love you are crying for may have destroyed your peace later. Right now, you only remember the good moments, the late-night conversations, the attention, the laughter, the feeling of finally being understood by someone. And because your heart is hurting, your mind keeps replaying memories in a beautiful way. You miss how they made you feel. You miss the connection. You miss the version of them you created inside your imagination. But sometimes the greatest danger is not the person themselves. It is the fantasy you built around them. Because many people do not fall in love with reality. They fall in love with potential, with hope, with imagined futures that never truly existed. And this is why heartbreak becomes so painful. You are not only grieving a person, you are grieving the future you imagined with them, the marriage you pictured, the life you hoped for, the emotional safety you thought they would give you. But maybe Allah saw something your emotions were too blind to notice. Maybe the love you are crying for today would have become the reason for your exhaustion tomorrow. Because not every relationship that starts beautifully ends peacefully. Some people enter your life like comfort, then slowly become chaos. At first, they give you attention, then confusion. At first, they make you feel chosen. Then they make you feel emotionally unstable. And slowly, you begin losing yourself trying to keep them happy. You overthink every message. You fear upsetting them. You walk on emotional eggshells. You tolerate disrespect because you are afraid of losing them. And without realizing it, the relationship becomes emotionally unhealthy. But because you are emotionally attached, you keep calling it love. This is why believers must stop judging relationships only through feelings, because feelings can deceive human beings. A person can strongly desire something that quietly destroys them. That is why Allah's wisdom is greater than human emotions. Allah sees the full picture while you only see temporary feelings. You may think, "But I love them so deeply." Yes, and that is exactly why the test became dangerous. Because the deeper the attachment, the harder it becomes to recognize when something is harming your soul. Sometimes Allah removes someone because they were becoming more important to you than your peace, more important than your emotional stability, more important than your connection with Allah. And this happens to many people today. They become so emotionally attached to one person that their entire mood depends on them. If that person replies, they feel happy. If that person becomes distant, they collapse emotionally. If that person leaves, their entire identity shatters. But no human being should have that much control over your heart. Only Allah deserves that level of dependence. And maybe this heartbreak happened because Allah wanted to save you before the relationship became even more painful, before marriage exposed hidden problems, before betrayal became deeper, before emotional damage became permanent. Because sometimes Allah protects you through separation. And the painful truth is this: some people look beautiful in the beginning because Allah is testing your heart, testing whether you will choose temporary emotional pleasure or trust His wisdom even when it hurts. And many people fail this test because they worship feelings. But believers understand something powerful. Peace matters more than emotional obsession. Real love should not constantly destroy your mental health. Real love should not make you beg for consistency. Real love should not make you feel unwanted every day. The person written for you by Allah will not require you to destroy yourself emotionally just to keep them. They will bring tranquility, respect, mercy, emotional safety, not endless confusion. And maybe years from now, you will thank Allah for removing the person you once thought you could not survive without. Because what you called heartbreak was actually Allah saving your future from a pain far greater than the one you feel tonight. Sometimes the love you cry for today would have become the sadness you cried over for the rest of your life. Allah is not delaying love. He is preparing someone better. One of the hardest feelings in life is watching everyone else receive what you are still praying for. You see people getting married, falling in love, building families, posting happy moments. And quietly, your heart starts asking painful questions. Ya Allah, when will it be my turn? Why does love come easily for others but not for me? Did you forget about me? And sometimes, the waiting becomes emotionally exhausting, especially at night. Because nighttime makes loneliness louder, the silence becomes heavier, the memories return, the overthinking begins, and Shaitan whispers dangerous thoughts into your mind. You will always be alone. Nobody will ever truly love you. Everyone leaves. But listen carefully. Allah is not late, and your story is not behind. Human beings rush everything because they only see the present moment. But Allah sees your entire future. He sees who will break you, who will heal you, who will distract you from Him, and who will help you become closer to Him. That is why Allah sometimes delays relationships out of mercy, because receiving love too early can destroy people who are not emotionally or spiritually ready for it. Many people ask Allah for companionship while they are still deeply wounded inside. They want another human being to fix their emptiness, their sadness, their loneliness, their insecurity. But no human being can permanently heal a heart disconnected from Allah. That emptiness always returns. And this is why some relationships fail. Because two emotionally broken people meet expecting each other to become saviors. But wounded souls often end up hurting one another. So, Allah delays certain relationships until your heart matures, until your standards become healthier, until your dependence on people weakens, until your connection with Him becomes stronger. And maybe right now, Allah is protecting you from choosing someone based only on loneliness, because loneliness can make people ignore obvious warning signs. It can make toxic attention feel like love. It can make temporary emotional comfort look like destiny. And many people ruin their lives simply because they were tired of waiting. They married the wrong person because they feared being alone. They ignored red flags because they wanted emotional validation. They rushed into relationships that later destroyed their peace for years. But believers must remember this. Waiting with Allah's protection is better than rushing into emotional disaster. And maybe Allah is not withholding love from you. Maybe He is preparing a love that will not destroy your soul. A person who fears Allah. A person who respects your heart. A person who brings calmness instead of anxiety. A person who does not make you beg for effort. Because the right love written by Allah feels different. It does not constantly confuse you. It does not leave you emotionally starving. It does not make you question your worth every day. Real love feels safe, stable, merciful. And maybe Allah is still preparing both of you for the moment your paths finally meet. So stop believing you are late in life. Allah writes every story differently. Some people receive things early and lose them quickly. Some people wait longer and receive something far healthier. And wallahi, a delayed blessing from Allah is always better than a rushed mistake caused by loneliness. Because Allah does not delay goodness to torture you. He delays it because timing can change your entire future. And perhaps one day, you will realize that every delay protected you from settling for less than what your soul truly deserved. Stop begging closed doors when Allah already closed them for a reason. One of the most painful things human beings do is keep chasing people Allah already removed from their life. Even after the relationship ends, part of you still hopes. You check their social media. You replay old conversations. You reread messages that should have been deleted long ago. You keep wondering if maybe one day they will return and become the person you wanted them to be. But sometimes, the hardest truth to accept is this: if Allah closed the door, stop trying to reopen it with your emotions, because many people destroy themselves emotionally by refusing to let go of what Allah already removed. They become trapped in memories, trapped in false hope, trapped in emotional addiction, and, instead of healing, they spend years emotionally attached to someone who already walked away. But believers must understand something deeply. When Allah removes someone from your life, there is always wisdom behind it. Even if your heart cannot understand it yet, you may think, "But I still love them." Yes, but love alone is not enough to make a relationship healthy. You can love someone deeply and still be harmed by them. You can miss someone terribly and still be better off without them. And sometimes your sadness is not because they were good for you. Sometimes your sadness is simply withdrawal from emotional attachment. Because attachment behaves like addiction. The heart becomes dependent on attention, dependent on validation, dependent on emotional familiarity. So when the person leaves, your soul panics. Not because they were truly your peace, but because you became emotionally dependent on them. And this is why letting go feels terrifying. Because part of you fears emptiness. You fear starting over. You fear never feeling loved again. So you continue chasing closed doors. Even when Allah already showed you sign after sign after sign. But listen carefully tonight. You cannot heal while constantly reopening the wound. You cannot move forward while emotionally living in the past. And you cannot receive what Allah has prepared ahead of you while obsessing over someone Allah already removed. Some people are not part of your future. They were only part of your lesson. A lesson about boundaries. A lesson about self-respect. A lesson about emotional dependence. A lesson about trusting Allah instead of blindly trusting feelings. And maybe the reason Allah removed them was because He knew you would never walk away on your own. Your emotions were too attached, too hopeful, too blind to the damage. So Allah closed the door Himself, not to punish you, but to save you before the attachment destroyed your peace completely. And this is why believers must stop romanticizing people who hurt them. Stop worshipping memories. Stop glorifying relationships that constantly exhausted your soul. Because sometimes the person you miss the most is the same person who made you cry the most. And that is not peace. That is emotional chaos disguised as love. Allah did not create your heart to live imprisoned by one human being. Your heart belongs to Him first. And when you finally surrender the pain to Allah, something beautiful begins to happen. The obsession slowly weakens. The memories stop controlling you. The sadness becomes lighter. And, for the first time in a long time, your soul begins breathing again. So, stop begging doors to reopen when Allah already closed them with His wisdom. Because what Allah removes from your life intentionally may be the exact thing standing between you and the peace you have been praying for all along. The right person sent by Allah will feel like peace, not pain. This generation has become so used to toxic love that many people no longer recognize what healthy love looks like. They think love is supposed to feel confusing, painful, unstable, emotionally exhausting. They think constantly crying over someone means the connection is deep. They think anxiety is passion. They think emotional chaos is romance. But real love, the kind of love Allah wants for you, does not slowly destroy your mental and emotional peace. Because Allah never designed love to make you lose yourself completely. The right person sent by Allah will not make you spend every night overthinking their intentions. They will not leave you emotionally starving for basic care. They will not constantly disappear and return whenever it benefits them. And they will not make you feel like you must beg to be valued. But sadly, many people become attached to emotionally unavailable people because they mistake inconsistency for excitement. When someone gives attention one day and distance the next, the heart becomes addicted to chasing validation, and slowly the relationship becomes emotionally unhealthy. You begin overanalyzing every message, every tone change, every delayed reply, every small shift in energy. Your peace disappears. Your confidence weakens. Your entire mood becomes controlled by another human being. That is not love. That is emotional imprisonment. And many people stay in these situations because they are afraid of loneliness. They would rather remain emotionally drained than face temporary emptiness. But believers must understand something powerful. Loneliness is painful, but losing yourself trying to keep the wrong person is far worse. Because the wrong person can slowly damage your self-worth without you noticing. They make you question your value, your beauty, your importance, your lovability. And after enough emotional pain, you stop recognizing yourself. But the person written by Allah for you will not make your soul constantly feel unsafe. They will bring stability, mercy, gentleness, respect, and most importantly, they will fear Allah in how they treat your heart. Because somebody who truly fears Allah cannot comfortably play with your emotions. They cannot intentionally keep hurting you while claiming to love you. Real love carries responsibility. Real love protects. Real love cares about your emotional well-being. And this is exactly why Allah describes marriage as tranquility, not torture, not endless confusion, not emotional games. Tranquility, sakina, a peaceful home for the heart. But many people today are chasing butterflies instead of peace. They chase excitement, intensity, obsession, temporary emotional highs. And because of this, they ignore calm, sincere, healthy people while becoming addicted to toxic ones. Damaged hearts often feel uncomfortable around peaceful love because chaos became familiar to them. And maybe this is why Allah removed certain people from your life, because you were becoming addicted to emotional pain while calling it love. You kept tolerating things that were damaging your soul. Disrespect, inconsistency, coldness, manipulation, emotional neglect, and you kept hoping they would eventually become the person you imagined. But Allah saw the reality behind the fantasy. Allah saw how much your heart was suffering, how much anxiety you were carrying silently, how much emotional exhaustion you normalized just to avoid losing them. So Allah separated you from them before the damage became even deeper. And maybe tonight, you still miss them. But missing someone does not always mean they were good for you. Sometimes you only miss the emotional attachment, the routine, the attention, the fantasy of what you hoped they would become. But one day, Allah may place someone in your life who changes your understanding of love completely. Someone who speaks gently to your heart. Someone who does not disappear when things become difficult. Someone who makes your life feel emotionally safer instead of emotionally heavier. Someone whose presence brings calmness instead of confusion. And suddenly, you will understand why Allah removed the people who constantly disturbed your peace. Because the right person will not feel like a constant emotional battle. You will not have to destroy yourself to keep them. You will not have to beg for reassurance every day. You will not have to question whether you matter. The love written by Allah brings dignity to your soul, not humiliation. And perhaps that is why Allah allowed your heart to break earlier, because He wanted to teach you the difference between being emotionally attached and being genuinely loved. One creates addiction, the other creates peace. And maybe for the first time, Allah is preparing you for a love that will not pull you away from Him, but bring your heart closer to Him instead. So if someone left your life, do not let your pain convince you that Allah forgot you, because sometimes the people who walk away are only making space for the people Allah truly wrote for your future. And maybe one day you will look back at the heartbreak that once made you cry in the middle of the night and thank Allah that it never worked out. Because what you called rejection, Allah called protection. What you called loss, Allah called redirection. And what you thought was the end of your story was only the beginning of the peace your soul had been searching for all along. So tonight, stop chasing what Allah removed. Stop reopening doors Allah already closed. And trust the one who knows the unseen, because Allah can replace pain with peace, confusion with clarity, and broken hearts with something far more beautiful than they ever imagined. May Allah heal every heart listening tonight. May He remove every attachment that harms your soul. And may He send you the kind of love that brings you closer to Him, not further away. Ameen.